Don't forget you are the co-moderator too, because you're the expert. I'm the generalist. Thank you first to our host today, Maria Walsh, member of the European Parliament, Vice Chair of the MEP Alliance for Mental Health. Thank you that you have time for this. You are very active since a year in this topic, and I think often underestimated in the discussion. But I think also new in the context with SMEs. And I think why it is so important for SMEs, who is closer to their employees, because SMEs are small, they are families often. And I think it's also, if you see this, it's about take care, but it's also about business because there are enormous costs. And if the gold for the digital age is data, for SMEs are still the employees the gold. And I think we have to invest in them. And before I go to present the speakers, I want only to mention how important it is. The global burden of mental illness, both in terms of financial costs and disability, reveals that of all cancers combined. So it means this is a huge thing for our societies, and I think we cannot more often discuss this. And our target is this, to inform our SMEs, to inform the association, that they bring this knowledge we generate here to them, and perhaps it makes a little bit a change. So, and I want to say we have now really very good experts. Thank you that you have time. First, Katri Alias, founder and CEO of Triumph Health. Thank you that you are here today. Then Ellen Jennings, communication officers at Bodywise Nutrition Specialist, member of JMAN Europe. Dr. Alessandro Ayas Vasquez, scientific coordinator at Eat to Be Nice. Alice Benskin, head of partnership NutriTank. And because we have really 1 hour of power, I will give directly the opening to Maria Walsh. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you very much, and delighted to be a virtual participant today. I think it's incredibly important, just before I get into my formal wordings, that everyone who is connected today and who no doubt will watch back will ultimately learn something. And that's something I'm most empowered by, that we all leave understanding the area of which we're about to discuss a little bit more. To give a formal introduction to who I am and where I'm coming from. My name is Maria Walsh. I'm an Irish member of the European Parliament for Midlands Northwest constituency. So whoever has the graciousness of arriving, and you're most welcome to Ireland. I cover the northern half of Ireland, bar Northern Ireland. So it's a big constituency of about 13 counties, and it really covers urban, rural, very remote areas, a number of businesses, and those great entrepreneurs who post-pandemic have bustling ideas to come to the fore and create a stronger European Union in the world of digital and many other sectors. I'm really delighted to be joining you today. And as I mentioned, I'm really excited to hear and learn from the panelists who will share more knowledge than I on this given topic. And I always like to talk, when we talk about mental health, just to give you a little bit of insight into why this is a big interest and a big passion for me and my team. When I first entered the Parliament, I was told that mental health wasn't a competency of our great European Union. It's essentially that there's nothing that could be done. But ultimately, when you pare that back, how is our citizens' well-being not a competency of the EU when we talk about all the other great work the European Union does, the Council, the Parliament, and ourselves? I left my head a little bit, I was scratching it for sure, because I thought for me that was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard, being told that this only served to motivate me further and my colleagues from both the Alliance and the Coalition here in the Parliament. And really work collectively across political parties to make sure this was addressed and on the agenda table of all leaders. Mental health is something that's been on my radar for a very long time, long before I became a politician 3 years ago. In a way, this passion grew out of personal experience, because a number of family members within my community, not directly related, but within my community, unfortunately had lost their lives through death by suicide and faced multiple challenges within mental health pressures. And I often wondered, A, why aren't we talking about it? B, why are we only living in the reactive phase of this? And ultimately, collectively, what we can do to better reduce the stigma, if not remove it, and have an open conversation about the best practices we can do, and essentially be one good adult for each other when we talk about mental health. For me, this initiative began because it became very obvious to me that we had so long ways to go in mental health, both as an Irish perspective and then as an EU perspective. And I could see not only did we need to address mental health in terms of funding and the infrastructure that support around that person in that community, but we also need to look at the way we talk with one another about mental health. And that, considering we spend a great deal of work or time at work, I think is a great avenue for this conversation today. And as I mentioned, I wanted to address the stigma and discrimination that unfortunately still surrounds mental health and well-being for us all, not just some. Mental health and well-being, as was rightly pointed out, is at the forefront of my political journey since being elected in the European elections in 2019. Last July, to give you a little bit of context of what we're working on here in the Parliament, we voted on a file I was really proud to be a rapporteur for, called Mental Health in the Digital World of Work. And I believe that this own initiative report was a beginning of a great new journey for mental health in our EU. And there's no health without mental health. We know that, but ultimately we need to make sure others who are responsible for funding and building of the infrastructure, our council and our commission and other MEPs here, as well as you all connected, really appreciate and understand what that means. In my role as an MEP, I also, as rightly pointed out, am a co-chair of both the MEP Alliance for Mental Health and the Coalition for Mental Health and Wellbeing within our Parliament. These two great interest groups are focused on mental health and well-being of our citizens and are key players in expanding the dialogue surrounding mental health across all areas and sections and committees in our Parliament. One of the key priorities for my co-chairs and I is developing a comprehensive and, more importantly, a proactive EU mental health strategy. What do I mean by this? Well, this strategy can only be developed through the intersectional dialogue and cooperation. Not trying to make this a Brussels bubble speech, but certainly what areas do we need to work with, and essentially all, if we're going to put mental health at the very fore of what we do here in policy. Because, as I said, mental health is not an isolated concept, therefore it can't be treated as one. It affects and is affected by a myriad of external factors spanning all areas of day-to-day life. One practical action which I've taken is calling on an EU year dedicated to mental health, having a year devoted to talking about good mental health, best practices, supporting businesses, particularly our SMEs and entrepreneurs, in understanding what they can do in the practicality of supporting employees, and ultimately employees also working with employers in this proactive space at community level is incredibly important in that mission for an EU year dedicated to mental health. Lifting the stigma, having meaningful conversations, learning how to be one good adult, applying funding and infrastructure when and if we need it. And the only way to make progress on this issue is to keep in line the vision of those who have power to do something about it, which is each and every one of us. I must say I was a bit disappointed, a bit gutted that our President of the Commission didn't appoint 2023 as a EU year dedicated to mental health. Because I campaigned along with my colleagues quite a lot for it, but it allowed us to focus on an EU year of education and training. And for me as a Culture and Education Committee member, education is key when we talk about good mental health, particularly the areas around nutrition and healthy lifestyle, which I really look forward to hearing from the panelists today who are key experts in those. From a young age, we're taught that eating will help us look and feel our physical best. But what we know now, based off further research, better conversation, that good nutrition significantly affects our mental health too. A healthy, well-balanced diet can help us think clearly and more alert, but I'm going to leave that to the best experts who you hear, because I certainly have a pen in hand and a piece of paper and I'll be jotting down their insights and guidance and wisdoms too. But essentially, I'm really looking forward to working across the board with you all in promoting healthy eating and exercise and good nutrition, and ultimately understanding as consumers, which we all are, that we have choices and how to best support ourselves and our mental health, be it in business, our community, our education, here in policy and politics, and world over, that we're supporting other people in able to access healthy eating, exercise, and mental health supports too. I'm gonna wrap it up there because I think I've gone on a little bit too long, so apologies. But I just want to flag to everybody watching and who will watch. Unfortunately, report is showing that our second leading cause of death for young people right now in our EU is death by suicide. Our second leading cause of death. That is not significant if we leave it and ignore it. And ultimately, when I say not significant, I think we have an opportunity now, based off what we learned from the pandemic, based off the fact that we have a health commissioner who herself is a child psychologist by trade, and a president of the commission who is as dedicated to mental health as you and I. And we need to ensure other council members, commission members, and parliamentarians and organizations like yourselves watching are working together to make sure that we are building a union where that statistic and report is not real anymore. We cannot have a strong EU, we cannot have strong businesses and communities if we do not have citizens who have support for their mental health. And that comes through, as we'll learn today, nutrition and the healthy balance that we all seek and strive for. So wrap it up there. Thank you very much. And really looking forward to learning from you all.
Thank you very much, Ms. Walsh. I have to say, we can feel your passion and through your speech. And I think, yes, like you say, we have to spread this message, because mental health, I think it's really we have to transport information, knowledge, and also education. And we started the healthy lifestyle at work and home with a practical campaign in Germany to reach out to SMEs, because you spend 8 hours normally per day, 5 days per week with your colleagues. And I think there's how to learn what it means, mental health, and what the problems are there, but also how to handle it, how to discuss this with colleagues. How, if you're speaking about suicide, if something like this, you have this fears that your colleague has such thoughts, how to handle it, how you can handle this as boss, as manager, as small SMEs. I think what are the warning signals? This we all discussed. We have 3 points: mental health, nutrition, and sports. I think this belongs together, health, body, and activity. But now we have a topic, nutrition and mental health. I think it's underestimated on the continent. It's very well discussed in Australia, in the United States, also in Great Britain, perhaps also in Ireland, because in this cultural, perhaps also scientific context. And we have to learn now what it means, because we have many canteens, we have many possibilities to support employees to eat healthy, to inform them how to do this. And we have, as the first speaker now, it changed again, Vincian Quadbach. No, she asked me to start now. Vincian Quadbach, Public Health and Policy Research Project Manager, European Brain Council. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for being part of this discussion, taking a deep dive into how diets impact mental stability and well-being. My name is Vincian Quadbach, and I'm Research Project Manager, Public Health and Policy at the European Brain Council. And the link between nutrition and mental health is extremely important. As Maria said, as a lifestyle risk factor, this is an area that would deserve more attention, particularly from a prevention and policy regulatory perspective, and this particularly with a life course approach. The European Brain Council is a non-profit organization and network bringing together key partners in the brain ecosystem with scientific societies, patient organizations, professional societies, and industry partners. So why are we here today? Actually, we are here to reach out to policymakers, explaining the gaps in knowledge, the gaps in research, the gaps in data, and what has to be done to advance the field of nutrition and brain health. And brain health refers not only to neurology and psychiatry patients, but also mental well-being of the whole citizen. So as we all know, improved health promotion and disease prevention can reduce the prevalence of non-communicable disease, including brain disorders, by as much as 70%. Yet, only 3% of total spending in the EU is targeted towards health promotion and disease prevention. It's far too little. So, according to the WHO, more than 1 in 3 people will suffer from a neurological and/or psychiatric disorder at some point. Health and economic costs are very high. As you can see, it can cost on a yearly basis 800 billion to all countries in the EU together. Poor diet is a major, but one of the few modifiable risk factors for brain disorders. Diseases associated with brain health are highly prevalent. As an example, depression, anxiety, and schizophrenia are the leading causes of disability, and obesity is a risk for brain health, with rates increasing rapidly in most EU member states. So why then is the full potential of nutrition not utilized to improve brain health? Nutrition for brain health is an under-investigated scientific area and has not yet been prioritized by decision makers at policy level. Also, another aspect is that foods are no drugs. The investment needed to test and formulate a food product is not justified by returns on money investment. In the prevention of brain and mental disorders, or in the treatment of milder forms of brain and mental disorders, a nutritional intervention is preferable to a pharmaceutical in terms of side effects and consumer acceptance, providing that there is a valid evidence base to demonstrate clinical efficacy for the individual nutritional intervention. So according to a brain health and nutrition survey in 2018, 9 out of 10 citizens would change their diet if they knew it would lower the risk of cognitive decline, 87%, and heart disease, 88%. There is a lack of evidence and poor knowledge by professionals. And this is actually cited by the Brain Health and Nutrition Survey, 2018. I would like also, and as part of the European Brain Council, just here rapidly showcase 2 projects that we have been coordinating here at EBC. The first one is the project on the value of treatment for anorexia nervosa. It's a project which was led by Professor Janet Treasure from the King's College London. And as we all know, anorexia nervosa is a very serious mental illness which has a typical onset in adolescence and a protracted course, leading to adverse outcomes, reduced quality of life, and high costs. So the aim of the study here was to model an optimized care pathway in comparison with current care in England, Germany, and Spain. Also here, the second project that I would like to showcase here is raising the question, is there evidence that food impacts on brain health? And here, the European Brain Research Area, which is a EU-funded project and coordinated by the EBC, the Brain Food Cluster was led by Professor Roger Adden and Professor Susan Dixon. And they also looked at the impacts of food on brain health, highlighting, for instance, that low levels of B12 and other B vitamins, such as vitamin B6 and folate, may be linked to depression. So here shortly, I'd like to refer to this article on towards new nutrition policies for brain health, a research perspective on future actions, that's just been released, and it was written by the Brain Food Cluster, but also to highlight, and this is part of the recommendations of the article for policymakers, is that 2 things. We need to increase scientific evidence. Firstly, identify nutrients and the impact on brain health, identify the neuronal circuits, spheres, and molecules linking nutrition with brain health, bridge basic science mechanism to clinical outcomes by identifying biomarkers, and also key messages that are important is to say that we need to implement dietary recommendations, personalize nutrition, and improve nutritional education at all levels. So thank you very much. And if you have any question, I guess it will be for the end.
Thank you very much. I think this was a very brief and very good, informative overview about the complexity of this topic. And you mentioned already the key points, that there we have too less evidence, it's underfinanced, and in fact, we need also to start now to act if this has such an impact. We're coming now to our next speaker, Katria Halayas, founder and CEO of Triumph Health. Please, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. I'm very happy to be here as a child psychologist. So here lies my competence. So I'm not going to talk that much about nutrition, but let me first give you an overview in general of what we are doing at Triumph Health. Because even though I come from academic background, I received my PhD at the University of Helsinki from the Faculty of Medicine there. But now for the past 6 years, I have been leading my startup. And what we are doing is that we deliver psychological support to children through a game environment, a mobile game, a safe and intuitive environment for children, a very seamless way of providing care to children in a way that they would actually engage with it, because this is the problem with mental health management, that we tend to drop out, and the statistics are quite low, even up to 80% for children, that they don't commit to mental health management through the traditional methodology. So we need to change this, and we have done it from our side through the game. Our solution is something that is completely personalized for children aged 7 to 12. It is for mental health prevention and promotion, essentially. And in the game, one of the strong building blocks for strong and good mental health management is, of course, nutrition and healthy relationship with food in general. So we do not teach children what foods are healthy and which are unhealthy, what they should eat and what they should not eat. Instead, we are familiarizing themselves with concepts of mindful eating. Like, what does it actually mean that when we are enjoying food, that we actually focus on that? We don't do 10 different things. We are not behind our screens or doing other things. We're actually focused on that. We are with all of our senses, we are enjoying the food. Of course, healthy food is not something that everyone has access to even. So that's why we need to, in our own solution, we need to be very mindful of that as well, that we keep everything related to health behavior, but not to make children feel bad, for example, if they are already struggling with their mental health, just to have another burden on top of their minds, that they actually don't have access to healthy foods that the game or another solution would tell them that they should definitely consume. In our solution, we do teach children how food is essentially the fuel for our brains, right? That we are able to function when we are consuming nutritious foods. We are teaching them, as we are working with children between the ages of 7 to 12, then just, about the energy that we get from food and why it's necessary, and not be very strict, but really to make sure that we are able to have this healthy relationship with food, and mindful eating is the basis of that. But also we focus on nutrition, beyond nutrition, also on hydration and physical activity, healthy relationships, and mental health management in general, because we might be very strong in theory, but we also have to use those concepts. We need to know, we need to actually make sure that that we walk the talk, right? And children as well. So this kind of the game environment from that perspective is really good, because we do give a lot of external motivation in the beginning, but this is not to keep children attached of a solution, but to give them independence and freedom of choice. So we also evaluate, once those learned behaviors become internalized, then our solution has made its job, and children, they do know that they are doing this or that for themselves.
Very much. I think this is very a good angle, because to start already as child to learn what is healthy, how to avoid this, and how to recognize already first struggles. I think it's very important. And we have this in Germany, this quote: "What little Hans is not learning, big Hans will never learning." And perhaps this is why often people know what is good, but they don't change their habits. And I think to start with this, and also this practical aspect, how to transform the knowledge to good behavior. I think this is one of the main struggles. And I want to go now to Ellen Jennings, Communication Officer at Jamin Europe. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you for having me here today. So my name is Ellen, and I'm the Communications Officer at Bodywise, and we're the support organisation for people affected by eating disorders and their families in Ireland. And we're here today, we're a member of GAMAIN Europe, the Global Alliance for Mental Illness Advocacy Networks Europe. So I'm going to be speaking, I suppose, on behalf of people affected by mental ill health, and in particular people affected by eating disorders. As we know, eating disorders are very serious and complex mental health conditions that can go underreported and under-recognized, and they have one of the highest mortality rates of all mental health conditions. And we do know that presentations of eating disorders are rising worldwide, including before and throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. And as I mentioned, the statistics that we are seeing may be underrepresentative due to the secretive nature of the illness and stigma that may prevent people from reaching out for help. So I think, as Maria said, there's a myriad of different factors that can play a role in our mental health. And I think that's definitely the case with eating disorders as well. They're extremely complex in their maintenance, development, and impact on a person's life. So there's no doubt that nutrition can play a role in our mental health, and equally our mental health can play a role in how we nourish ourselves. So a person may turn to disordered eating behaviors or other risky behaviors as a way to cope with things, I suppose, internal to themselves and external to themselves in the environment around them. So things like our working life, stress, lack of sleep, work-life balance can all affect our mental health. And equally, our mental health can affect our ability to engage at work. And the person can become trapped in a cycle of intense feelings of guilt and shame, and that can lead to a worsening of their mental health. Things in the world around us like diet culture, weight stigma, food insecurity, nutrition misinformation can all play a role in a person's risk of developing an eating disorder. We know that dieting is one of the main risk factors for the development of an eating disorder. So it's important that nutrition messaging is not black and white. Black and white thinking is one of the main thinking patterns in someone who's experiencing an eating disorder. Eating disorders aren't a choice. They're serious and complex mental health conditions, and we know that a malnourished brain cannot engage in complex thought, so the person becomes caught up in this black and white thinking, and the cycle can continue. When we think about how disordered eating can impact on our mental health, it can impact on the person's mood, their energy levels, their mental capacity. The majority of thoughts become focused on rules around food, planning around food and exercise, and the body and body image. So a person's relationship with food and their body is a really important key aspect of our mental health. I think it's important that public health messaging around nutrition for mental health is sensitive to those at risk of disordered eating. And people with eating disorders are often very aware of the environment around them, and they're more vulnerable to making comparisons to what other people might be doing. So they can take advice on board that may not necessarily apply to them if they're unwell. And that's also the case when we think of disordered eating. Disordered eating exists on a spectrum. When compulsion comes into it, that's when we're leaning more towards an eating disorder. But often people can relate to some degree of disordered eating at some point in their life. So it's important to be aware of that. What we've heard from our service users can be unhelpful is when public health campaigns have a very strong focus on weight. We know the impact that weight stigma can have on people's mental health and self-image, self-esteem, self-worth, and these are all risk factors for the development of an eating disorder. Kadri mentioned it briefly as part of the app around the moralization of eating and good and bad foods. This is something that we want to avoid, that rigid approach to eating and the guilt and negative emotions that can be associated with seeing food in that way. So I think the guilt and negative emotions can then lead to more extreme cycles of restriction, food avoidance, and binge eating. So we need to be careful that nutrition messaging is not oversimplified and that we're aware that vulnerable members of the public can internalize these diet and exercise related messages in a very simplistic or generalized way if they're displayed in that format. So I suppose that what I really want to say is that a person should be able to integrate nutrition guidelines as just that, guidelines, safe in the knowledge that everyone has unique and individual needs and there are unique and individual body shapes and sizes. A person should be able to eat without a sense of fear and anxiety around what they're eating and make no connection between what they're eating and who they are as an individual. So I suppose that it's a complex area, and I know nutrition can play a role in maintaining good mental health, and I think that we just need to be aware of how we share those messages as well.
I think you say something very important. I think this is a complex because you're interacting in a society with people and how they are reacting to your behavior and how you are looking. I think it's difficult to say in one way, you're overweight. I'm overweight by myself. If you say, yeah, at the same time, you should be not ashamed. You can be proud on your body. In the same time, I know it's not healthy to have this overweight. At the same time, this how to balance this and how to formulate it in a good way, in a positive way, and not. And I think also how in the supermarket, what you're buying, that everybody's looking, look what she or he is buying, and judging. I think, and then you are starting even more to go deeper in your problems. Yeah, I think this is something very important, how we acting to other people also and how we can empower them or not. We're coming to the next speaker, Dr. Alejandro Arias Vasquez, Scientific Coordinator at Eat to Be Nice. Please, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here and share our scientific work in relation to the effects that nutrition has on brain health. So I'm going to give a very short perspective from the science side and touch briefly on our efforts to communicate this better with everyone. That is one of our main goals in the consortium. So our main goal is to identify nutritional drivers for behavior. Now, we don't dispute the fact that nutrition has an effect on the brain. That is undisputed. Our goal is to identify how this works. In that way, we can generate, design, and implement intervention strategies that can help current strategies improve the health of people with mental problems. One thing we have been able to show is that the effect of nutrition in mental health, while robust, is very small. That's what the science is telling us. The other thing, the second thing that our research is telling us is that the effect of nutrition in mental health can be direct, depending on the type of food you consume, the frequency of food you consume, but also because of how our body is built to process that ingest of energy and food. So for example, you have a genetic predisposition depending to tolerate and manage specific molecules in your food. So we want to identify those genetic markers that can help us process food in different ways. And it's very important to go back to what Ellen said. There's not a real difference between what is good and bad. We're trying to remove those adjectives in the nutritional parameters that we investigate. I am not a nutrition expert. I'm a biologist. I've done statistical genetics for 20 years, and now I'm working on microbiota, gut bacteria. So we are trying to look at this from a very general place. And one of the things we've done is that we have removed, or trying to remove, the good or bad nutrition from our research, because that's very difficult to determine, because we are all so different. We have very different backgrounds, and we are exposed to very different situations. Now, another parameter that we looked at very closely is exercise, physical activity. Not only the intensity of the physical activity, but also the frequency of physical activity, and how engaging into physical activity improves our mental well-being. But that does not occur in isolation, of course. That occurs in interaction with our nutritional behavior. It occurs in interaction with our other, daily life routines. So we try to account for that via the use of e-health technologies, where we are in communication with our participants and we ask them specific questions about their mental well-being in what is called a pseudo-random approach. So you contact them several times a day and you ask them specific questions. And at the same time, you also measure specific parameters from them. And we're trying to build models that can help us, let's say, identify risk profile, to preventively identify people that might be at higher risk of mental problems via this, let's call it unbiased measurements. Also, we include investigations, and this is my personal favorite, on the gut bacteria that lives in us, in all of us. And the gut bacteria works like a type of hub. Imagine it like a big airport where flights are coming in and coming out at all times. That's like the gut bacteria works in a similar manner. It receives input from our brain, because our brain and our gut communicate constantly, 24/7, very, very fast. And the bacteria modify this interaction, this communication. It produces substances that we don't make, and helps us with energy, helps us with nerval communication, helps us to educate our immune system, helps us to produce hormones and the processes in which these bacteria are involved are key to our well-being, including our brain well-being. It sounds a little bit odd, right? Bacteria living in your gut, determining how your brain works, but they do. It's pretty amazing. And we have worked and we have shown these relationships. We are building these data sets across Europe, here in the Netherlands, but also across Europe, trying to investigate the relationship between this bacteria and how the brain is working. And we account for, of course, nutrition in this, because these bacteria need the food we give them. So it's a what is called a symbiotic relationship. We give them a nice, warm place to live, and we give them food. And in exchange, they give us all these substances we cannot make, we cannot produce. Now we are trying to integrate all these building blocks, as I said before, with the aim to generate susceptibility profile, where we can identify people at a higher risk of what we call maladaptive behaviors, behavior that is not positive for your social interaction, for your well-being. Things related with impulsivity, things related with aggression, with compulsivity, addiction, that are referent behaviors for neurodevelopmental disorders, psychiatric disorders, but are also, of course, normal behaviors that we all have. So the utility of this is quite significant. Finally, via E2B-Nice and our website, newbrainnutrition.com, we try to engage, or no, that's not correct. We engage very actively with our stakeholders, with patients, their families, clinicians, teachers, because for us it's very important to communicate this information in a way that is useful for people. So we are a group of scientists and clinicians that decided actively to step down from the ivory tower of research and go down and talk to people and actually create positive feedback loops where we explain what we want, but we also hear and try to incorporate what people want in order to, help them solve their problems or improve their quality of life. So what I've heard today in terms of using technology, involving nutritional advice, dissemination about the public health problems, we try to integrate this, and I see here in this group a lot of opportunities to make this quite stronger and bigger. We are very active with several patient organizations, including those from depression, ADHD, autism, all throughout Europe. And we try to really involve them in our research because it's very important to start co-designing and co-creating research studies with the input of the people that we are trying to help. Finally, to keep it short, we are also investigating the biological relationship that exists between mental health and somatic health, so the health of the rest of the body. Because we know now for many years already that there is a very big and significant overlap in the biology between how our brain works and how the rest of the body works. And this is related with how the metabolism is worked. So you can think about things like obesity, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and then these things relate genetically and environmentally with things like depression, bipolar disorder, ADHD. We have the data, we have the information. So we are in a very special place where we can integrate this information and actually help the whole body, the whole system. So we can look at the brain and from there project to the rest of the body and have significant impact in public health. And this, of course, in hand with novel educational strategies, I would say, as it was said before, on how we can promote better type of eating in a different way. This, of course, includes a lot of structural changes in policy, but hopefully our grain of sand from the academic side can contribute for this. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much that you give us this scientific biologic point of view. I think this is, and how also other diseases are related in mental health. I think also how we adjusting food is related. If we are stressed, we are not taking this nutrition so into us like normal. If you have stomach burning because of stress, it's causing cancer in one way. So it's related in many things. And I think also if you say there are bacteria related, if you're taking antibiotics, it is destroying this bacteria. We cannot get the supplements of the nutrition like we should get. And then it has mental issues. It's a complex thing. And it's also good that you want to bring this complexity in a simple way to communities, to families, as communities, that they can change behavior as group. I think this is also very important. Now we're coming to Alice Benskin from Nutrition Think Tank. And she has issues with her camera, with the internet, so we can hear you only. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I am just going to share my screen. So welcome to this presentation today on nutritional psychiatry. I'm Alice Benskin, a registered nutrition scientist with Association for Nutrition and head of partnerships for NutriTank, which is an acclaimed nutrition in medicine startup and not-for-profit set up by doctors for doctors and medical students to educate them regarding nutrition and lifestyle medicine. And we have a very key focus here on nutrition for mental health of healthcare practitioners and their patients. So in terms of nutritional psychiatry, this is an exciting emerging field of research, which is investigating the impact of food and dietary patterns on brain health and mental well-being. Research to date has focused on 3 umbrella areas: mental health conditions, neurological disorders, and neurodiversity. Due to time constraints, today will just be a very brief overview, exploring some of the findings to date with specific regards to mental health. So here we have some common mental health conditions. We've got depression, OCD, schizophrenia, anxiety, BPD, and PTSD. And in terms of mental health, poor diet quality is an important consideration, as this impacts on levels of beneficial bacteria in the gut and also blood sugar levels, which are 2 key mechanisms which are involved in many of these mental health conditions depicted. One reason for this is because gut bacteria synthesize serotonin, dopamine, GABA, and glutamate, and these are neurotransmitters which are all involved in emotional regulation. Additionally, blood sugar dysregulation can also cause mood swings, energy dips, and impair mental acuity. In terms of research to date, symptoms of depression have been observed to be correlated with a higher dietary level of sugar, salt, saturated fat, and ultra-processed foods. Additionally, low omega-3 and vitamin D have been suggested to increase the risk of developing anxiety, depression, and schizophrenia. A recent review of the literature also indicated that a higher intake of refined carbohydrates and total fats, and a lower intake of fiber, omega-3, vegetables, and fruit, as well as deficiency in vitamin B12, B6, folate, vitamin C, zinc, and selenium, are all common dietary factors observed in many cases of psychosis and schizophrenia. So conversely, individuals who consume a healthy diet have been observed to have a lower risk of developing many mental health conditions, particularly those consuming higher amounts of vegetables, fruit, whole grains, legumes, nuts, fish, and seafood have been particularly shown to have a lower incidence of mood disorders. Further, specific nutrients such as omega-3, vitamins B1, B2, and B5, B6, vitamin C, and magnesium have all been associated with a lower incidence of mental health conditions, particularly anxiety disorder. So what should we eat to support our mental health? I've placed on this slide a few guidelines here on the left. And to contextualize this, really key foods we should be looking to include every day are fiber, so from a wide array of vegetables, also beans, lentils, and whole grains, and fermented foods such as kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, natural yogurt, kombucha, as these all support good gut health and increase levels of beneficial bacteria in the gut. We should also be looking to consume a wide array of colorful vegetables and fruit, because these contain many of the vitamins and minerals that we need to support brain health, as well as polyphenols, which have been indicated to increase, again, the presence of beneficial bacteria in the gut, as well as reducing inflammation, and have been shown overall to be associated with improved mental well-being and emotional stability. Consuming oily fish, walnuts, chia seeds, and flax seeds are all wonderful ways that we can be increasing our consumption of omega-3 on a daily basis. And again, increasing omega-3 has been associated with increased prevalence of beneficial bacteria and reduced inflammation. All these dietary patterns may also help to support blood sugar stability and neurotransmitter synthesis. Finally, staying hydrated throughout the day by drinking 6 to 8 glasses of water is essential for mental acuity and emotional well-being. So here now are some more discretionary foods which are best limited and avoided to an extent if possible. And these include the ultra-processed foods such as burgers, fries, chips, sausages, sweets, cakes, pastries, ready meals, energy drinks, and fizzy drinks. Coffee, although rich in polyphenols, can also increase symptoms of anxiety in some individuals and can have a negative impact of blood sugar. So it's really important to choose quality over quantity. So perhaps enjoying a couple of cups of filter coffee maximum per day and not after 12 midday, as for many individuals, this can impact on sleep. As alcohol has been indicated to, increase inflammation and negatively impact on the balance of gut bacteria, it's best to avoid this and replace with low or no sugar alcohol-free alternatives. And one such alternative could be kombucha, which is a fermented green tea drink, which would actually be supportive of gut health and increasing beneficial bacteria. Thank you so much for listening. Please do check out our website, nutritank.com. You're welcome to subscribe to our newsletter. We also have some membership options as well for individuals listening who perhaps are interested to learn more about what's going on in terms of nutrition and lifestyle medicine. Do feel free also to follow us on social media as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This was a very concrete advice already. And I think this is something we have here related about knowledge. So first about data and scientific work, how to finance this. We had here how to educate, how to transport this knowledge. And then we have now the concrete advice. I would only ask you these questions. We heard also it's very individual, but in general, there's healthy food you should eat more, or is this more like, if I go eat everyday fast food, this cannot be healthy also for mental health, not or? What would be the shift, in fact, for me personally? So like I would say some basic rules you should keep to it. Mm-hmm. Are they existing, like Alice says, this are basic rules to have this food you should eat every day, or is this too easy thought by me?
I'm happy to. Is that specifically for Alice?
Yes, please.
I was just going to say to focus, I suppose, on inclusion and what you can include in your diet and improving variety, exposure to lots of different nutrients and fibers that are going to help improve your gut microbiome. I think that's what Alice touched on in terms of your gut health, and Alejandro as well in terms of how that's connected to your mental health. So I think more research around that and its link with eating disorders as well. We know that gut health can be impaired in people with eating disorders, particularly restrictive eating disorders, where they might not be getting the diverse variety of different foods in their diet that can have an impact on their gut health. So it'd be interesting to see the link then that would have with mental health.
We heard also education and knowledge. Like we discussed it also before, somehow in Europe is the discussion not so deep or not so common. What we would have to do is in the scientific, in the academic world, is the discussion in Europe already arrived? How you're thinking we can spread it to politics and also to society better?
Yeah, I can comment briefly. I see that, let's say, there is a significant roadblock here because we don't understand yet the actual effect that nutrition has in mental health. So the machinery, the inner workings, they're still elusive. We know they're there. One of the things we have discovered, for example, us and other research groups, of course, is that the effects of nutrition are small. Now, you mentioned something before and about the type of food and the risk it brings. But you also need to include there the frequency of the type of food you consume. And that is something we don't look at very often. Performing nutritional research on nutritional habits and behavior is extremely difficult to do. Extremely difficult to do. because the level of resolution you need to go to is very, very deep. So this kind of studies are extremely cumbersome for participants. So people are really disturbed in their normal life. You have to measure, weigh, count. So I think that those are the major roadblocks now between the science and the dissemination of the effects. And I want to say something here that perhaps is a little bit controversial. No, it's not really, but it makes people think. And if you think about the biggest food companies that exist in the world, I won't say any names, but just think about the first one comes to your head. None of these big companies, and they are very big companies, can make any mental health claim. It doesn't matter where your choice of food is, none of this can make a scientifically based claim of improving or reducing risk at the mental health level. So we're still not there yet. I am very positive in the sense that we will get there soon. And we need to keep on working.
So you mean that we have, because we're making this a claim that you see this can be a risk for your mental health and this can support your mental health, or how you can understand this?
What I mean is that there are particular types of food or food elements that have been consistently associated with specific health risks. For example, those related with metabolic function, cardiovascular function, and other functions, hepatic function, etc., the function of your liver, your kidneys, etc. But there is no scientifically based claim that you can put on a label in any food product supported by science that it helps or reduces the risk of mental health issues.
Okay,
so that is very important. So, and I stress that because there's a lot of advertisement, a lot of things on TV, on the internet, and people need to pay attention. So I think for the explanations that we heard today here are very useful for that.
Okay. I know this student food, this nuts and gray things you're eating for better thinking. This is since the 70s, I think, existing. Quatba, please, the floor is yours.
I'd like to also emphasize what Alejandro just said. Translate evidence into simple messages. I think it's across society that there is a lack of knowledge in terms of the impact of nutrition on mental health, and what we eat actually affects our mental health. It's simple as it is. An inadequate diet may have adverse effects on our body. It can lead to poor decision-making ability, fatigue, and a slow brain response. And so I think it's not only on the policy level that things need to be changed, but we need also to look at messaging, communication through commercial channels, but the whole population needs to be far more informed about the prevention aspects and mental health, particularly now with this mental health crisis that we are going through.
Alice, please, Benskin.
I agree so much with everything that has been said before. I think certainly in terms of the state of the way things are in the United Kingdom, one of our key barriers and why NutriTank has been founded is that awareness isn't there even amongst the medical community. So you have doctors seeing patients. Very often they're coming in saying, they're experiencing depression and anxiety. And our common policy here really is to give them a drug called sertraline, which is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And then, you have your 10 minutes with your doctor and you're sent away. And there doesn't really tend to be presently a lot of support or awareness there regarding, changing aspects of what a patient is eating, exercising more, taking on things like meditation or yoga or other such activities which are very supportive for mental health and well-being. So there really does need to be a change. It has to be a change at the grassroots level, and it really needs to, certainly in the UK, there needs to be that education for doctors, nurses and other healthcare workers, because it's not there at the moment. And I feel that that is a significant roadblock also.
It means that we have perhaps too fast this answer with pills and medicaments, and not the simple thing to say, look, you are what you're eating. Perhaps that you start with this. I think Hippocrates was saying this, oh, let the food be the medicine and the medicine be the food. Perhaps there is some knowledge in it. But Ms. Halias, if you're seeing this now with children and you're working with children, do you think there is already there this fundamental, if he's saying perhaps misleading, lack of knowledge, misleading by advertisement and so on, how children are fit to be healthy? Is there really such a lack in knowledge? I think it's also related to family knowledge, huh? Like we hear it from communities.
Well, absolutely. Children model through what they see by adults around them also. But there is more education around nutrition and around mental health, and it's improving across Europe. But it takes time. And I just wanted to touch upon the policy suggestions part as well. What Alejandro also said, that nutrition plays a small part in mental health, right? But actually we need to take this small step, because that has big impact on mental health. And if we don't take this small step, then it also has big impact. And that goes for the complexity of mental health. And that's why on a policy making level, it's difficult to comprehend. It's such a complex thing that we cannot just take one symptom and run with it. We need to focus on people as a whole. And if we add nutrition to that as well, then it makes things even more complex. And sometimes it's difficult to ignore, or easier to ignore complex issues than to deal with them, because it's tough for mental health experts. And then we have politicians who are also in trouble with trying to understand the complexity.
Thank you. This is what we learned with the exchange with SMEs, and they have programs also for the employees, that they know that 50% are not taking part on these programs, and the 50% who taking part on these programs, on health programs and so on in the company, they are already healthy. They have sports at home. They have thinking about the others who you want to reach, you don't reach. And I think this is a huge problem. I think how to break this mystery, because I have to say also, I know what I think I know what I should eat, but I don't eat it what I should. This is also a problem. If you would like to make a wish or an idea, what you would say, what we should do, or what we should change, or what you would claim, a simple thing, what you say to the society, to companies, or to the policymakers, what you would say, which step would be make now already a simple, directly step, what we can do, and it would have already something, what we say, we make it a little bit better. Who wants to start?
I wish every day would be a mental health day.
Yeah, I think at school, the programs in Bavaria, I know that they are started already with a mental health day. So I think this is already a step forward. Who wants to be the next?
If it's perfectly normal and accepted to have diabetes, why is it not normal and acceptable to have ADHD or depression? That's what we should be all asking ourselves every day.
Diabetes is a huge disease, what is mental and everything touching. This is, I have to say, it's always with aged people and people with overweight related. So
yeah, but not necessarily, because you also see age, early onset diabetes, children, adolescents mostly.
It's increasing, yeah. But I say normally you're thinking diabetes are all people or overweight.
Oh yeah, they're not.
Yeah.
But what I want to stress is that we need to remove the blind from our eyes, where that's still there, making us think that if there is any mental difficulty, any mental problem, that you are less somehow, and that is not the case. Mm. Every disorder, everything has its own limitations. That's fine, but they're part of our natural world. They're part of our natural being. They're part of our species. No, and we have to deal with that appropriately, in the way we deal with other things appropriately.
Yeah, I understand. Very good. Hélène, perhaps? Jennings?
Yeah, I think I would add to that around reducing the stigma around mental health conditions, and particularly in relation to eating disorders, that they can affect anyone of any shape or size, age, gender, ethnicity. It really doesn't discriminate. And I suppose in terms of health promotion and policy around nutrition, to try and focus on nutritious food options along with safe, enjoyable physical movement, regardless of the person's size. And touching again on the complexity of nutrition science and how there can be so many factors that influence and confounding factors. You know, care needs to be taken, that the messages that are taken from these studies are not oversimplistic and overgeneralized for the general population. Thank you.
This is, yeah, we should campaign perhaps with media, sports, and also other persons that we have this more, yeah, it should be an everyday stuff, in fact, mental health, like cancer, because I have to say, you know, which two disease, you know, from your background network, it is cancer and suicide or depressions. Everybody knows somebody. This is something I think we should keep in mind. Quatbach, please.
Yeah, I just would like to say that nutrition can be part of the solutions for the mental health related issues. And I would like also particularly to emphasize youth in this sentence. We have to look at solutions, and certainly, I mean, we're always talking about pharmaceutical interventions for mental health disorders, but actually nutritional interventions are key. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yes, this is, I think, a very good point. Prevention, and then also that the cure is not always in chemistry to find. So it's also in the natural behavior. Alice Benskin, please.
I think my wish would be for each individual from a young age to really have an understanding that it's okay to not be okay. But in addition to that, to be really empowered with lots of different tools that will set them up well throughout life for supporting their mental health and well-being, and that nutrition education, food focused would be a really strong part of that, so that they can really be set up well for their mental health throughout life.
Thank you very much. I think this is also a very good, important approach. And I wish me to invite you to our network. I think we have to connect all the different people, stakeholders in society, the sport part, the nutrition part, the SMEs, the consumers, to have more exchange and also to make more to create more attention in politics, that and also to offer solutions perhaps or projects we can implement to help. Also little steps can be made forward. I think it's like you personally have not to change your complete life if you change already 1 or 2 days per week for you. I think this is something we have to start. And now I pass over to Stephanie Offe.
Yes, thank you. Today we have learned that diet and nutrition has a very much impact on our mental health due to value contributions. The awareness of mental health has risen sharply in the recent years, but unfortunately the role of nutrition has more often been overlooked. And however, the global burden of mental illness, both in terms of financial and costs and also disability, reveals that all of cancer combined. So that really highlights the importance of embedding nutrition into public health strategies to protect and improve our mental health and emotional well-being. At this point, I would also like to once more thank our host, Maria Walsh, a member of the European Parliament. Unfortunately, she couldn't stay the entire time, but she's very engaged in the mental health related topics, and she shared her email address with us in the chat to get in contact with her to share information or data that could feed her work in the European Parliament. We appreciate the opportunity she gave us today to come together for the exchange and knowledge and especially experience as well. And I would also like to thank our speakers for lending your expertise, and thank you all for joining us. for this important and interesting discussion today. For those who couldn't stay the entire time, this webcast was recorded and we will share the recordings once it has been uploaded on YouTube. For more information on our working groups and our upcoming events, or our European initiative on healthy lifestyle at work and home that actually faces exactly that, what we were focusing on today, like sport, mental health, nutrition, to actually support our overall healthy well-being, please visit our website at smeconnected.eu. And I wish you all a great day and a very healthy lunch break. Thank you very much.